Boxing.
Welcome back to the channel. I hope you got a chance to watch the fight last night. That was a good domestic fight between Joshua Buatsi, who defeated Craig Spider Richards in 12-round unanimous decision. I hope those guys are okay. There was a lot of leather being exchanged. Shout out to Hatman too. I was on his live stream yesterday doing a commentary and just a bit of banter talking about the fight and, you know, bashing a few rappers here and there. Shout out to you. Shout out to anybody that was tuned into that as well. And big up any new subscribers that are watching today. And we'll talk about the fight because both guys looked quite nervous actually early. You know, even the ring walk, there was definitely some nervous energy there. And, you know, when the bell went, Buatsi to me looked a bit more nervous than Richards, and that played out in the whole fight. In my opinion, Buatsi never quite shook that nervous energy, you know, and it was affecting his performance. In my opinion, you know, I thought he fought well, but there was a lot of mistakes and a lot of things to work on. I think his trainer, Virgil Hunter, you could tell that, you know, look, they practice and preach the hit and don't get hit science. And Buatsi was getting hit quite clean, quite hard, quite often, with big shots in the mid-range, massive lead uppercuts. Look, he was doing his own damage too on Richards. I'm not saying that. I'm just like saying it is a worry when you see a contender get hit so hard, so clean, so often. And, you know, I think Hunter will be pulling the brakes on him a little bit to get him into that next level, because they're talking about sticking him in at a world level right now. I think that's a bad idea, but let's talk about that a bit later. But we'll get into the fight. You know, it was in the center of the ring. Buatsi, you know, kind of, he had a good jab at times. Richards obviously had a good jab, and there was a bit of an exchanging of the middle center of the fight, which I think favored Richards for the most part. You know, Buatsi, we're used to seeing him push his opponents back and being ultra aggressive on the ropes, and he did do that at times, and that was when he had more success. And you know, especially hitting to the body, when he was able to get Richards up on the ropes and just let his hands go. That's the Buatsi we really know. And when he was, like, you know, trying to box in the middle, giving Spider an opportunity to set his feet and let his hands go, that was when it was favoring Richards. So obviously there was more ebbs and flows in the fight, but for the most part, I think Buatsi was just really, like, just the energy, you know, his nervous energy was a big problem for me, because that was affecting a lot of things, especially with his punches. Occasionally he would snap his jab and it looked great, but then towards the middle, later, he was sort of pouring with it, not probing. You know, if you're just throwing it out there with no intentional purpose, it's dangerous. And he was getting caught in the mid-range just to get with clean shots. He couldn't see a lot of the shots when he has his guard out. The mid-range is the most dangerous point to be in a boxing match, because you're in punching range and your opponent doesn't have to really move their feet. And, you know, Richards was catching him with those heavy uppercuts, because when you gloves like this, you can't see peripherally where the shots are coming from as much. But, you know, Buatsi was getting some great work done on the inside. You could see a bit of Virgil Hunter's work coming in there, where he was holding a little bit and letting his shots go. Very sneaky, very crafty, keeping his base under him and his balance. And he was looking good at doing some inside work. And then Richards would come back as well, and there was a lot of ebbs and flows. Both guys were hurt a couple of times. I think it was it the 8th? Buatsi was definitely hurt and stunned, and then, you know, he would let his hands go and sort of punch himself out a little bit, and then he would try to regroup, and Richards saw that and he was putting the pressure on him. It was a really good, interesting fight. I really enjoyed that. I watched it again this morning just to catch up on a few things and just look at it from a different light. And you know, it was an interesting fight, but I think I would say Buatsi was probably the more relieved to, like, have the final bell. Richards made a push for it at the end, and he has done himself, you know, a lot of credit, because his stock will have gone up despite losing. And Buatsi, there was some professional ex-world champion pundits that were saying they were very impressed with Buatsi's performance. Sergio Moro was one of them. Look, he works for DAZN, so I'm not like that surprised, and I was impressed at times, but like you only got to look at his trainer's energy in the post-fight and how they're saying to like rein him in. If he really was that impressive, you'd be like, okay, yeah, he's ready for these guys. But he was making a lot of mistakes, and there's a lot to be concerned about with getting hit clean that often and being that nervous and that gassed pretty early on. So there was another pundit, I can't remember, who was like very impressed with Buatsi, and that's fine, that's their opinion. They're world champions, they got far more credit to speak on this than I do. But you only got to look, like I said, at Virgil Hunter's reaction, where he's clearly like, okay, we're not quite there yet. And that was a domestic fight, domestic level, and you should be really, if you're really impressive, put a dominant performance in. Maybe I'm being a bit harsh, but it's a good learning fight for Buatsi. These fights where you might not look impressive, and you might not have wanted to do the things you needed to do, but my goodness, you will learn so much from this, especially with the headlining, dealing with the, bit of adversity, getting hurt, having to, dig deep and not getting your own way. These are massive learning curves for Buatsi, and fights like that, as bad as that was for his health, because getting hit clean with that many shots is never good, but he will have learned a tremendous amount from this fight, as will have Richards. So, it'd be interesting to see how they can do moving forward. And I think maybe one or two more fights. There's some domestic fights out there I'd love to see Buatsi take before getting in there, or even talking about a Bivol or Beterbiev or even a Joe Smith. I think should stay well clear of those guys for right now. Tony Bellew's scorecard was absolutely insane. 7 rounds to none for Buatsi. That was absolutely ridiculous. I mean, there was definitely a couple of rounds he could have given Richards. I know there was a lot of close rounds for sure, and that was a close fight. And I had Buatsi. I didn't score it after a few rounds in. I think after maybe 3 or 4, I was just watching the fight. But like from the eye test, and you think, okay, Buatsi's probably nicked this one and won it. Some wide scorecards that were a bit too wide, but good fight. Boxing wins again. We're on a roll, as I keep saying, and it's exciting for the sport, and these domestic fights will do these fighters all the favors in the world. Even if Buatsi didn't look as impressive as I thought, he'd have learnt a lot, and they can go back to the drawing board and work on a lot of things. Spider's a tricky customer. He's tricky in there, and he's long, and he's got a good jab, and anytime somebody's got a good jab, it's not as easy to deal with. And Buatsi wasn't necessarily able to get past that all the time, and he wasn't able to have his own way and do what he needed to do, which is pushing him back and getting on the ropes. And he did it at times, and when he did, that was when he was more successful. But then he would punch himself out too. So he needs to be able to deal with that nervous energy. That is what he's going to be able to take most from this fight, I think, because that nervous energy is crucial. And when you're going up a level and you're going to fight these top guys, they'll have had these fights to do that, and they'll have gone past that, and they'll be in a better place. So, but look, they've both got chins. Spider, they both took some massive shots. I know they got hurt, but my word, that was they showed some beards in there last night, man. That was impressive. And take my hats off to both of them. I hope they're healthy, and on to the next. Let's see what they both come up with. Richard's probably not going to be they're not going to want to fight him. The contenders, probably not the domestic levels, because he's a handful, and he showed that last night. And what Buatsi does next will be interesting. I do like the Callum Johnson fight. The Yard fight, obviously, Yard doesn't really want that just yet. And then Callum Smith as well. There's the Vlasov fight, which is an awkward fight, but you got to get him into these not quite world title, world level. Even though I know Callum Smith is a former world champion in that, but that's a good test. And you just don't want to stick him in there with the top guys just yet. I would give him another fight or two, and let him learn from these experiences. And yeah, good fight. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you think. Do you think Spider won? Do you think, let me know your thoughts, because do you agree with me on the nervous energy of Buatsi? And if so, how do you think you can fix it in previous and in future fights? And yeah, shout out to both guys for providing the entertainment. Shout out to all the new subscribers, like I said. Shout out to Hatman, and big up everybody. Take care of yourself. Boxing on the Edge. I hope you have a great week.